If you've ever worked the night shift, you know it's a world of its own. Silent, empty, and haunted by shadows. But Ashwood Inn is something else. I was just a night cleaner, nothing special. I thought I knew darkness until I met the rules. Strange, twisted rules that had to be followed. Or you disappear just like the others. I thought they were just stories. I thought wrong. I didn't take the job at Ashwood Inn because I wanted it. In fact, I needed it. Bills were piling up, and my last job as a night janitor at a factory went under, leaving me scrambling for anything. Ashwood Inn's night shift paid well, almost too well. The manager, Mr. Hargrove, an older man with a thin, sallow face and a voice like gravel, barely interviewed me. He looked at me once, nodded, and muttered, "You'll do." On my first night, I arrived just as the last of the guests were retiring to their rooms. The lobby was grand but outdated, with worn carpets and peeling wallpaper that hinted at the inn's age. Mr. Hargrove was waiting for me at the front desk, a thick, yellowed envelope in his hand. "Before you begin, read these," he said, handing me the envelope. "These are the rules." I laughed, thinking it was some sort of prank, but the look in his eyes told me otherwise. They were cold, a glint of fear barely hidden beneath his practiced professionalism. "Take them seriously, Mr. Ellis," he whispered, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "These rules are not suggestions." My amusement faded. I slipped into the supply closet near the lobby, a small, cramped room that reeked of bleach and must. Carefully, I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper, yellowed and frayed at the edges. The rules were handwritten, each one in thick, black ink. 1. Never clean room 104. Ever. 2. If you hear whispering in the empty halls, do not respond. Continue your work. 3. Always knock 3 times before entering the ballroom, even if you know it's empty. 4. If you see a figure standing in the dining hall after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. 5. Leave by 3 a.m. No exceptions. A chill ran down my spine. Was this a joke? A strange, hazing ritual for new employees? But the weight of Mr. Hargrove's voice, the tremor beneath his calm demeanor, it didn't feel like a joke. Still, I had bills to pay. Strange rules or not, I needed the money. I grabbed my cleaning supplies, a mop, bucket, rags, and a cart loaded with disinfectants, and began my rounds. The first hour was uneventful. I mopped the lobby, dusted the reception desk, and polished the glass doors. I tried to keep my mind off the rules, but they kept nagging at me. Why would I be warned against cleaning room 104? And who could possibly be in the dining hall at 2 a.m.? I tried to laugh it off, but my hands were trembling. I checked my watch, 12:45 a.m. I moved to the second floor hallway, an eerie, narrow corridor lined with ancient oil paintings. My footsteps echoed against the dark wood floor, and then the whispering started. At first, it was a faint, distant murmur, like someone having a hushed conversation down the hall. I paused, listening, trying to make out the words, but they were muffled, almost like they were underwater. My grip on the mop tightened. The rule echoed in my head. If you hear whispering in the empty halls, do not respond. I forced myself to continue, pushing the mop down the corridor. My eyes were fixed straight ahead, avoiding the shadows that seemed to shift in my peripheral vision. But the whispering grew louder, more insistent. I bit down on my lip, tasting blood, but I didn't stop. I didn't speak. By the time I finished the second floor, the whispering had stopped. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to move on. The ballroom was next. I hesitated outside the grand double doors. Always knocked 3 times. My knuckles tapped against the wood. 1, 2, 3. Silence. I waited, half expecting someone to answer, but there was nothing. I pushed open the doors and stepped into the dark, empty space. The chandeliers overhead were unlit, their crystal pendants swaying gently, though there was no breeze. Shadows danced along the mirrored walls, twisting and stretching as my cleaning cart's wheels squeaked against the marble floor. I moved quickly, wiping down tables, sweeping the floor, but a sense of unease settled over me. I felt watched, a cold prickle crawling up my spine. When I finished, I didn't linger. I practically ran out of the ballroom, closing the doors behind me. 1:55 a.m. I was nearly done, just the dining hall left. As I entered, I kept my eyes low, focusing on the patterned carpet. My hands worked mechanically, wiping tables, straightening chairs. But then I felt it, eyes on me. The rules surfaced in my mind. If you see a figure standing in the dining hall after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. I glanced at my watch, 2:04 a.m. My breath hitched. Slowly, against my better judgment, I looked up. At the far end of the room, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. Tall, thin, its form almost translucent, like a smudge of darkness against the pale wallpaper. It didn't move, didn't speak, but I felt its gaze, a piercing, cold weight pressing against me. I forced myself to look away, continuing to clean, but my hands were shaking, and the room felt colder with every passing second. The lights overhead flickered, a soft, almost rhythmic pulsing, and the air grew heavy. Finally, I couldn't take it. I abandoned my cleaning cart and bolted for the lobby. Mr. Hardrow was gone. The front desk was empty. I didn't care. I burst through the front doors into the night air, gasping, a misty fog rolling across the parking lot. But as I turned to look back at the inn, I saw it. Through the lobby window, that same dark figure staring out at me, its pale, featureless face pressed against the glass. I didn't look back. I got in my car and sped away, heart pounding. But the paycheck cleared the next day, more than I expected. Far more. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I told myself it wasn't worth it. But by the end of the week, I was broke again. And when Mr. Hardgrove called, offering me a bonus if I'd return, desperation won. But this time, I'd be prepared, or so I thought. A week passed, but the fear didn't leave me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure in the dining hall, its hollow, featureless face staring at me through the window. I told myself I was done with Ashwood Inn, that no paycheck was worth the creeping dread that gnawed at me even in daylight. But desperation is a powerful thing. Rent was due, my utilities were on the verge of being cut off, and Mr. Hardrove's offer replayed in my mind. A bonus. More money than I'd make in a month elsewhere. I convinced myself that if I was careful, if I followed the rules exactly, I'd be fine. When I stepped back into Ashwood Inn, Mr. Hardgrove was waiting at the front desk, his pale, gaunt face as unreadable as ever. He didn't ask why I came back, didn't offer any reassurance. He simply handed me a fresh envelope. New rules. I slipped into the supply closet and tore it open. This time, the list was longer. 1. Never clean room 104. Ever. 2. If you hear whispering in the empty halls, do not respond. Continue your work. 3. Always knock 3 times before entering the ballroom, even if you know it's empty. 4. If you see a figure standing in the dining hall after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. 5. Leave by 3 a.m. No exceptions. 6. If you hear the elevator chime on its own, do not enter it. Ignore it. 7. If a guest approaches you asking for directions after midnight, tell them to check with the front desk and walk away. 8. If the lights flicker in the lobby, do not stay. Move to another area immediately. My pulse quickened. More rules meant more danger. I nearly walked out then and there, but Mr. Hargrove's voice echoed in my mind. The bonus is yours if you finish your shift. Steeling myself, I grabbed my cleaning supplies and began my rounds. The first hour was quiet, just as before. The lobby was deserted, the grand staircase rising into darkness above. I mopped the floors, dusted the furniture, my ears straining for any sound. But it was when I reached the second floor that the unease truly set in. As I pushed the mop along the hallway, I heard it again, the whispering. Faint, almost like wind brushing against the walls. My heart pounded, but I remembered the rule. I didn't look around. I didn't answer. I just kept working. It wasn't until I turned to head back to the stairs that I saw it. Room 104. Its door was slightly ajar, a crack of darkness peeking through. But the rule was clear. Never clean room 104. Ever. I tried to ignore it, try to walk past, but something felt wrong. I hesitated, staring at the gap, the darkness beyond feeling like a hungry maw. Just then, a soft, wet thud echoed from within, like something heavy hitting the floor. My breathing quickened. Part of me wanted to reach out, to pull the door shut, but the rules were absolute. I stepped back, forcing myself to leave, but the door creaked open further, just slightly, as if something within sensed my presence. I bolted for the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the empty hall. 1:20 a.m. The ballroom was next. My hands were still shaking as I stood before the grand double doors. I knocked, 1, 2, 3 times just like before. I waited, the silence pressing down on me. I pushed the door open, but this time, the room wasn't empty. In the center of the ballroom stood a woman, her back to me, a pale blue dress flowing to the floor. Her hair was dark, almost black, cascading down to her waist. She stood unnaturally still, her figure slightly swaying, like a marionette held by invisible strings. "Ma'am," I whispered, barely able to keep my voice steady. She didn't respond. I took a step back, but the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged. I tried the handle. It was locked. The air grew colder, my breath turning to mist. The woman's head began to turn, slowly, too slowly. Her neck twisted with a sickening crack, and though her body remained facing away, her face now stared directly at me. Pale, lifeless eyes, a twisted, unnatural grin stretched across her lips. My body froze, terror locking me in place. But then the lights flickered. The chandeliers above swayed, casting wild shadows across the walls. The woman's face twisted further, the grin widening, her jaw distending. I threw myself against the doors, pounding, desperate. But just as the lights flared, the cold vanished. The doors burst open, and I stumbled out, falling to the ground. The hallway was silent, the air warm again. Was this a warning? A punishment for hesitating outside room 104? My mind raced with questions, but I didn't have time. I had to finish my shift. I forced myself up, moving to the dining hall. 2 a.m. My eyes darted around, watching the shadows. I moved quickly, wiping tables, stacking chairs, my heart a constant drumbeat. But then, I felt it, that familiar, suffocating presence. I didn't look up this time. I remembered the rule, do not acknowledge it. But even as I kept my eyes down, I could feel it moving, drifting between the tables, a soft scraping sound following it. My hands were slick with sweat, but I forced myself to keep working. 2:30 a.m. I was almost done, just the lobby left. But the elevator chimed. My blood ran cold. The rule: if you hear the elevator chime on its own, do not enter it. Ignore it. The door slid open, the elevator waiting, the interior a dark, yawning void. I averted my gaze, focusing on the lobby, trying to clean as fast as I could. But the elevator didn't close. The doors remained open, a soft, mechanical hum vibrating in the air. And then I saw them, bare, pale feet stepping out, just visible in my peripheral vision. They stood just outside the elevator, facing me, unmoving. My breath came in ragged gasps. I couldn't look. I wouldn't. But then the lights in the lobby began to flicker. Panic surged. The rule: if the lights flicker in the lobby, do not stay. Move to another area immediately. I bolted for the supply closet, slamming the door behind me. I heard something shuffle outside, a slow, dragging sound that grew fainter by the second. I checked my watch, 2:50 a.m. 10 more minutes. I just had to survive 10 more minutes. But then a voice whispered outside the door. Ellis. My name. It knew my name. My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to control my breathing. Ellis, you don't belong here. The handle jiggled, a slow, steady rattle. Come out, Ellis, we can see you. The lights in the supply closet flickered. My heart raced. I had to leave. I couldn't stay. But when I finally worked up the courage to open the door, the lobby was empty. The clock above the desk read 3 a.m. My shift was over. Without looking back, I ran out of Ashwood Inn. But even as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. When I checked my phone the next morning, there was a message from Mr. Hargrove. Excellent work last night. Your bonus has been deposited. But beneath it, another text appeared, a number I didn't recognize. You broke the rules, Ellis. Next time, you won't be so lucky. I didn't want to go back. Every instinct in me screamed to quit, to never set foot in Ashwood Inn again. But the money kept coming, more than I'd ever earned at any job. Enough to pay off debts, fix my broken down car, even stash away some savings. But with the money came the nightmares. Every night, I dream of the woman in the ballroom, her head twisting, her jaw stretching impossibly wide. I'd wake drenched in sweat, gasping for air. Her pale, empty eyes burned into my mind. But when Mr. Hargrove called again, offering another bonus, double the usual amount, I hesitated and then agreed. I told myself this time would be different. I would be careful, follow the rules to the letter. I wouldn't make the same mistakes. But as I pulled into the parking lot of Ashwood Inn, a dense fog hung over the grounds, a cold mist clinging to the skeletal trees that lined the driveway. It felt as though the inn was waiting for me. Inside, the lobby was empty, but there was an envelope waiting on the front desk. No Mr. Hargrove this time. The envelope was thicker, heavier. My hands trembled as I opened it and unfolded the paper inside. 1. Never clean room 104. Ever. 2. If you hear whispering in the empty halls, do not respond. Continue your work. 3. Always knock 3 times before entering the ballroom, even if you know it's empty. 4. If you see a figure standing in the dining hall after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. 5. Leave by 3 a.m. No exceptions. 6. If you hear the elevator chime on its own, do not enter it. Ignore it. 7. If a guest approaches you asking for directions after midnight, tell them to check with the front desk and walk away. 8. If the lights flicker in the lobby, do not stay. Move to another area immediately. 9. If the phone at the front desk rings after 1 a.m., do not answer it. 10. Avoid the West Wing after 2:30 a.m. Even if you hear footsteps, do not investigate. I stare at the list, a sense of dread sinking in. New rules again. More dangers. My mind flashed back to the last shift. The twisting woman in the ballroom, the figure in the dining hall, the voice outside the supply closet whispering my name. My mouth was dry, but I was already here, already trapped. I grabbed my cleaning supplies and began my rounds. The first floor was eerily quiet, the silence pressing in like a thick fog. As I dusted the reception desk, I kept glancing at the phone, an old, black rotary phone that hadn't rung the last 2 nights. The rule replayed in my mind. If the phone rings after 1 a.m., do not answer it. But it was only 12:30 a.m. I still had time. I moved to the second floor, trying to keep my mind steady. The hallway stretched before me, dimly lit, the faded oil paintings staring down like silent, watchful eyes. As I mopped the floor, a soft whisper drifted through the air, just like before. My muscles tensed, but I didn't react. The whispering grew louder, an urgent, frantic murmur, but I forced myself to keep working. Sweat dripped down my brow, my hands trembling. But when I finally reached the end of the hall, the whispering stopped, as though it had never been there. 1 a.m., the ballroom next. I hesitated outside the grand double doors, my fingers shaking. 3 knocks. I forced myself to keep them steady. 1, 2, 3. Silence. I pushed the door open, the darkness beyond swallowing me. My flashlight cut through the gloom, casting eerie shadows across the mirrored walls. But the room was empty. No twisted woman, no swaying chandeliers. I moved quickly, wiping down tables, sweeping the polished floor. But then, my flashlight flickered. Panic clawed at me. I slapped it, the beam stabilizing, but a shadow moved across the far end of the room. Too tall, too thin, sliding along the wall like a stain. I didn't wait. I rushed for the doors, but as I reached them, they swung open on their own. Cold air swept over me, and I stumbled into the hallway, heart pounding. I didn't look back. 1:30 a.m. The dining hall. I moved cautiously, remembering the rule. If you see a figure standing after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. But it was still early. I worked faster, wiping tables, stacking chairs. But then I heard it, a soft scraping sound, like a chair being dragged across the floor. I glanced up, nothing. The room was empty. I tried to keep calm, my hands moving on instinct. But then the sound came again, louder, closer. My breath quickened. A shadow stretched across the far wall, twisting, growing. I focused on my work, ignoring it. But the air grew heavy, suffocating. And then the phone rang. The phone at the front desk. I checked my watch. 1:05 a.m. My blood ran cold. If the phone at the front desk rings after 1 a.m., do not answer it. It rang again, a loud, piercing chime that echoed through the empty halls. I abandoned the dining hall, rushing towards the lobby. But as I reached the staircase, I froze. A figure stood at the bottom, tall, shrouded in darkness, its face a shifting, writhing mass. The phone kept ringing, louder, more frantic, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there, blocking my path. My heart raced, and without thinking, I backed away, turning to the West Wing. But then I remembered the new rule: avoid the West Wing after 2:30 a.m. I checked my watch. 1:15 a.m. I was safe. For now. I turned the corner, the dark hallway stretching before me. The phone continued to ring, but now it was muffled, distant. The figure didn't follow. My breathing slowed, but then a sound echoed behind me. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, following me. I didn't look back. I moved faster, nearly running. The hallway seemed to stretch, the walls closing in. The footsteps grew louder, closer, but I kept going, desperately searching for another staircase, another way out. A door loomed ahead, an emergency exit. I pushed against it, but it didn't budge. Locked. Panic surged. The footsteps were right behind me now, a cold, heavy presence pressing against my back. But then, a voice whispered against my ear, cold, breathy. "You shouldn't be here." I spun, but the hallway was empty. The footsteps stopped. The air grew warm again. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I ran back to the lobby. The phone was silent now. The figure was gone, but the lights began to flicker. I bolted for the supply closet, slamming the door shut. I checked my watch. 2:25 a.m. 5 more minutes before the West Wing was off limits. But a faint scratching sound came from the other side of the door. A slow, rhythmic scraping, like nails dragging against wood. "Ellis." My name. Again. "Ellis, you broke the rules." My breath came in gasps. I grabbed the broom, holding it like a weapon, staring at the door. But then it went silent. I checked my watch. 3 a.m. My shift was over. I burst from the supply closet, rushing for the exit. But as I stepped into the parking lot, I saw a figure watching me from the inn's second-floor window. Pale, featureless, just a shadow against the misted glass. And then my phone buzzed. A text message from a blocked number. "You're trapped now, Ellis. See you tomorrow." I didn't sleep after that shift. I couldn't. My phone's message, "You're trapped now, Ellis. See you tomorrow," burned in my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness I had walked into. I didn't know who sent it, but I had a sickening feeling it wasn't Mr. Hargrove. My phone kept vibrating with new payments, large sums deposited into my account. It was blood money, tainted, but I needed it. And yet, every dollar felt like a chain, another link binding me to Ashwood Inn. I considered blocking Mr. Hargrove, ignoring his calls, but that only worked for 2 days. Then a letter arrived at my doorstep. No return address, just a thick, crumpled envelope. Inside was a single note. "Missing a shift is not an option, Ellis. See you tonight." A cold chill clawed at my spine. I tried to convince myself it was a cruel joke, but when night fell, I found myself driving back to Ashwood Inn. The mist was thicker tonight, swirling around the trees like ghostly fingers. The inn's dark, looming silhouette seemed to watch me as I parked. The lobby was deserted, but a fresh envelope lay on the front desk. My hands trembled as I opened it. 1. Never clean room 104. Ever. 2. If you hear whispering in the empty halls, do not respond. Continue your work. 3. Always knock 3 times before entering the ballroom, even if you know it's empty. 4. If you see a figure standing in the dining hall after 2 a.m., do not acknowledge it. 5. Leave by 3 a.m. No exceptions. 6. If you hear the elevator chime on its own, do not enter it. Ignore it. 7. If a guest approaches you asking for directions after midnight, tell them to check with the front desk and walk away. 8. If the lights flicker in the lobby, do not stay. Move to another area immediately. 9. If the phone at the front desk rings after 1 a.m., do not answer it. 10. Avoid the West Wing after 2:30 a.m. Even if you hear footsteps, do not investigate. 11. If someone knocks on the supply closet while you're inside, do not open the door. My stomach twisted. Another rule. Another nightmare waiting to happen. I wanted to turn and leave, but my feet refused to move. I grabbed the cleaning supplies and began my shift. 12 a.m. The lobby was silent, the air thick with a musty, stale scent. I mopped the floors, dusted the furniture, but my eyes never stopped darting to the front door, half hoping someone would burst in and save me from this nightmare. But I was alone. I made my way to the second floor. The whispering started almost immediately, soft, hushed voices that seemed to crawl along the walls. My heart raced, but I kept my head down, my mop sliding across the worn carpet. When I reached room 104, I didn't look at the door. I didn't want to see it cracked open again. Didn't want to feel that cold, hungry darkness watching me. I moved faster, desperate to leave that hallway behind. 1 a.m. The ballroom. My hand was shaking as I knocked. 1, 2, 3 times. Silence. I pushed the doors open. Empty. A wave of relief washed over me. I worked quickly, wiping tables, sweeping the grand marble floor. But then my flashlight flickered, the darkness pressing in around me. I fought the urge to panic, forcing the beam to stay steady. But just as I turned to leave, I saw something in the mirrored wall. A dark figure standing behind me, tall and twisted, its body a writhing mass of shadow. I spun around, nothing there, but the reflection remained, staring, its hollow eyes boring into me. I ran. The ballroom doors slammed shut behind me. 1:30 a.m. The dining hall. I worked on autopilot, my hands wiping tables, my mind racing. I checked my watch constantly, counting the minutes until I could leave. But then the phone began to ring. The front desk phone. It was 1:05 a.m. The rule, do not answer. But this time, the ringing didn't stop. It grew louder, shriller, a piercing shriek that echoed through the halls. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. Panic twisted my thoughts. What if someone was trying to warn me? What if this was a trick? But then the ringing stopped. Silence. A breathless, crushing silence. I was about to leave the dining hall when I saw it. Someone sitting at one of the tables. A man in a tattered, dark suit, his head bowed, hands clasped together as though in prayer. I froze. The rule flashed in my mind. Do not acknowledge any figures after 2 a.m. But it wasn't 2 o'clock yet. I checked my watch, 1:50 a.m. But the man didn't move. His head slowly lifted, and I felt his gaze even though his face was a blur, a swirling mass of shadow. I backed away, nearly tripping over a chair. The man's head twisted, turning in an unnatural, jerking motion to follow me. I fled, slamming the door behind me. 2 a.m. The West Wing was next. But the moment I turned the corner, I saw them, shadows drifting along the corridor, whispering, crawling along the walls. The air grew heavy, a rancid, rotting smell flooding my senses. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're not supposed to be here, Ellis. I turned and ran, but the hallway seemed to stretch, twisting in on itself. The whispers grew louder, a chaotic chorus of voices screaming, laughing, crying. My head pounded, my vision blurred, and then something grabbed my arm. Cold, bony fingers digging into my flesh. I screamed, pulling away, but the grip tightened. I looked back. Nothing was there, but the pressure remained, icy and suffocating. The lights overhead flickered, plunging me into darkness. The whispers twisted into a single, guttural voice. "You can't leave. You're part of this now." I stumbled, my flashlight falling, its beams spinning wildly. Shadows stretched and danced, and then the lights flared, a blinding, searing light that washed everything in a sickly yellow glow. I was back in the lobby. My watch read 3 a.m. My shift was over, but I didn't remember walking back. I didn't remember escaping the West Wing, but the darkness had followed. Through the glass doors, I saw them, figures standing in the mist, pale, shadowed faces pressed against the glass, watching me. I burst outside, scrambling into my car, slamming the doors shut. But as I started the engine, I felt something cold against my shoulder. A hand, bony, pale, and grasping. My phone buzzed again. A text. "No escape, Ellis. See you tomorrow." I drove, swerving wildly down the mist-shrouded road. But the hand wouldn't let go, its icy grip squeezing tighter, dragging me toward darkness. But just before I lost control, it vanished. The car lurched, and I slammed on the brakes, panting, drenched in sweat. The rearview mirror was cracked, and from the jagged lines of the glass, pale, empty eyes stared back at me. I didn't go home. I couldn't. The darkness was with me now. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Every whisper of wind carried my name. I parked in an empty lot, the mist swirling around the car like a living thing. And I watched the rearview mirror. Watched those pale, empty eyes staring back at me from the jagged cracks. But they never moved. I told myself I wouldn't go back to Ashwood Inn, that I would leave town, vanish, disappear from this nightmare. But even as I thought it, my phone buzzed. Another text. "Your shift begins at midnight, Ellis. Don't be late." I threw the phone against the dashboard, but it didn't matter. The darkness had already sunk its claws into me. Even now, I could feel something watching, a cold pressure against the back of my neck. I was a prisoner, trapped in a game I didn't understand. By 11:30 p.m., I found myself driving back to Ashwood Inn. My hands were pale, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The mist was thicker than ever, a swirling, suffocating fog that seemed to swallow the road. When I pulled into the parking lot, the inn loomed out of the fog like a corpse rising from a grave. Dark, silent, its cracked windows like hollow, watching eyes. There was no envelope this time, no list of rules, just an empty front desk, the air stale and freezing. My phone buzzed again. Tonight, all the rules are gone. Survive until 3 a.m. My heart pounded. No rules. No guidance. Panic twisted in my gut. I didn't even have my cleaning supplies. Just me, alone, with whatever waited inside. I thought about leaving, but the doors behind me slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. A low, rhythmic hum began to pulse through the air, like a distant heartbeat, and the lights overhead flickered, casting long, twisted shadows across the lobby. I turned, and something stepped out of the misted glass of the entrance. No, not stepped, crawled. A shadow, low and writhing, its limbs twisting and bending in unnatural angles, dragging itself towards me. I bolted for the stairwell, but the moment I reached the second floor, the whispering began. Louder than before, a chaotic, maddening chorus of voices that seemed to press against my ears, drilling into my skull. Ellis, you shouldn't have come back. You belong to us now. Can you hear them? They're hungry. The hallway stretched and twisted, doors shifting and contorting, the walls pulsing like the sides of a living creature. I stumbled, disoriented, but forced myself forward. I didn't even know where I was running, just that I needed to escape. And then I saw it. Room 104. The door was wide open, darkness spilling out like a thick, oozing fog. I tried to turn away, but a force pulled at me, the air thick and heavy. A figure stepped out of the room, tall, pale, and featureless, its body a shifting, writhing mass of darkness. And behind it, other shapes crawled, twisted and broken, their limbs bending at impossible angles, their faces stretched and contorted in silent screams. I ran, the hallway twisted beneath my feet, the carpet rotting, peeling away to reveal a dark, endless void. The chandeliers overhead swung wildly, their lights bursting one by one, plunging me into darkness. But then the ballroom doors loomed before me, and I threw myself against them. They swung open, and I tumbled inside. The room was dark, the mirrors cracked, the air freezing. But it was quiet. For a moment, blessed silence. But then a slow, deliberate knocking echoed from behind me. 3 knocks, just like I was supposed to do. But I wasn't at the door. I spun around. The mirrors along the wall shuddered, and from within them, pale, hollow-eyed faces began to emerge, pressing against the glass, their mouths opening in silent screams. I backed away, but the floor buckled beneath me, the tiles cracking, a cold, wet darkness seeping through. A hand burst from the floor, skeletal, clawed, grasping at my leg. I screamed, kicking it away, but more hands erupted from the darkness, clawing, pulling. The mirrors shattered, the twisted figures spilling out, crawling, writhing. I fought, desperate, but they swarmed me, their cold, dead hands clawing at my skin. I could feel them pulling me, dragging me down. My watch glowed in the darkness. 2:45 a.m. 15 minutes. I just needed to survive 15 more minutes. But the darkness was suffocating, a crushing weight pressing in from all sides. My vision blurred. The air grew thick, freezing. The voices clawed at my thoughts, a chaotic, maddening chorus. Ellis, give in. There's nothing but darkness. You belong to us. Stay with us forever. I screamed, thrashing, clawing, but my strength was fading. The darkness seemed to flow into my mouth, cold and wet, drowning me. But then, a sound cut through the chaos. A bell. A soft, distant chime. And the darkness recoiled, the figures shrieking, their twisted bodies writhing, crumbling to ash. I looked up. The grand chandelier above flared to life, a warm, golden light flooding the room. The darkness peeled away, the hands releasing me, the whispering voices fading into silence. I staggered to my feet, gasping, the air warm again. My watch read 3 a.m. I didn't waste a second. I bolted for the door, throwing it open, racing down the hallway. The lobby was empty, the mist outside thinning, pale moonlight piercing through. I burst out of the inn, gasping, the cold air sharp against my face. But as I reached my car, I saw something waiting for me, a figure standing by the driver's side door. Mr. Hargrove. His face pale, gaunt, but his eyes were different, dark, swirling voids, his mouth twisting into a cold smile. "You did well, Ellis. Very well. Well, what do you want from me?" I screamed, backing away. Mr. Hargrove's smile widened. "Ashwood Inn is hungry. It needs caretakers. And now so do you." His body twisted, distorting, his face stretching, warping into a mass of shadows. I didn't stay. I ran, sprinting down the mist-shrouded road, my breath burning in my lungs. But even as I left Ashwood Inn behind, the mist seemed to follow, a cold, clinging fog that whispered my name. I drove through the night, never looking back. But even now, days later, I don't sleep. I don't stop. Every night, my phone buzzes. New texts from unknown numbers. Messages that won't stop. "Your shift begins at midnight, Ellis. Don't be late. We miss you, Ellis. The inn is waiting." But the worst one arrived just an hour ago. An image. A picture of my own house, shrouded in mist. And beneath it, a final message. "You can't escape, Ellis. Ashwood Inn is everywhere."